It charged onto the American whiskey scene under the white flag of surrender. An embarrassing beginning, to be sure. But after several decades, have distillers had enough time to figure out how to make this category good? This episode is all about light whiskey. A lot of people probably haven't even heard of this, but it's definitely a thing.
Hey.
Yo.
And also known as actually back in that corner back here in a tote.
Okay.
A tote, you say? That may be it. Ta-da! Austin 101. So this is light whiskey. For those that haven't heard of it, which is going to be a lot of people, what exactly is light whiskey? How is it different from just whiskey?
In the 60s, roughly speaking, vodka and gin started replacing whiskey as the most popular thing to consume. That's what all the kids were doing. And whiskey, instead of going like, nah, it's okay, we know who we are, decided they wanted to chase vodka and gin into popularity. And they tried to create a whole new category because American whiskeys like bourbon, rye, malt, and rye malt all need to be distilled under 160 in order to stay inside of whiskey category. But vodka is just way the hell up there. So the whiskey guys wanted to distill something higher and make it lighter and strip some of the heavier flavor components out of it. In America, we didn't have a category for that. So whiskey makers started creating it, which was distilled in between 160 and 190. And the Fed said, okay, but you have to call it light whiskey.
This is kind of a good example of a race to the bottom, maybe, personal opinion. But if you're stripping out flavor intentionally, so you can go chase a fad, this didn't really have a romantic start for a category. The question is, should it be getting more attention now? Because there's been decades that whiskey makers have been able to see if you can make something good.
This is Austin 101. These guys are having their spirit distilled. I know who's making it, and they don't like talking about it. But I know Austin 101 talks about it all the time. So there's a divide on that communication scale. So let's just say that if you ask Austin 101, they'll tell you who's distilling it for them. And then they're taking it and putting it into used Garrison barrels. And it is Texas. It's 100% Texan. What are you getting?
Oh,
Wait.
some burnt marshmallow. Yeah, nobody light a match.
Yeah, seriously. Once you get it in the glass, you see how light it really is, even 2 years in a Texas summer.
Oh yeah, so a big part of that's going to be the fact that it was a used barrel.
That's the most of it.
Yeah.
The next one, do we want to get them before we try them side by side?
Wait, how do we get all of this light whiskey?
We also found out MGP was selling light whiskey super cheap, and it's like 13, 14 years old.
Those 3 barrels right there are MGP light whiskeys.
Oh, hey, that's even easy.
Wait, right here?
Yeah.
Sweet, let's do that. All right, here you go, look right here. That sticker that's coming off.
Distillery light whiskey, 2006.
Which means this is about to be 15 years old.
The used barrels that we have with this light whiskey, that's not a requirement for light whiskey, is it?
I don't remember. I'm Googling.
Here, let us Google that for you.
Oh, you know what? It's the same as corn whiskey.
Okay.
Either aged in used oak or uncharred oak. That's much darker. Can we walk to the tasting room where there's air conditioning?
Hey, you guys can kick the fans on. What's the deal with this?
Well, it's gonna... We've had a hard time finding contractors.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can make John do it.
Hey, John, come here. Come here.
John! We need you!
Come here, John. We were talking, John. We have amazing idea / opportunity.
I got a bad feeling about this.
This was the brand new boiler that we recently installed for the still from Abe.
We need to put a lean-to that will come off this building and go over the body of this thing.
A lean-to.
What? You need me over there? 1 second, I gotta go.
John. This episode is sponsored by Helix. These are basically super convenient, really nice quality mattresses that come to your door in a box. I got one, super great. My wife's on board. It made me feel like a raging idiot for spending way too much money on a very, very expensive mattress whenever we ended up liking the Helix a lot more. Now you gotta keep in mind, like whiskey, there's not a single perfect bed for everybody in the world. That's why they have this really helpful sleep quiz on the Helix website where you go through and you answer a few questions opinions, and then it will suggest this is probably the right choice for you, but whether or not you're a front sleeper, back sleeper, you like the softness, all that stuff. So after going through the quiz, it was the Sunset Lux, what I ended up with, and it's great. Now, getting a bed delivered to your door, it's super, super compressed when you get it. You open up the box, you open up the packaging, and then it unfolds into an amazingly comfortable bed whenever you choose the right one for you. Keep in mind they have a 100-day sleep trial, so you can get the Helix to your door. You can sleep on it for like 3 months, and if you don't like it, you will get a full refund, and they will come pick it up. I've had an exceptionally good experience with Helix. We love our mattress. Alex also got a Helix mattress. He just said it was by far the best mattress he's ever had. But before I can recommend this to you, quality control must be tested to the utmost. To Alex's apartment. Hey, buddy. If you're looking for a new bed, it's definitely worth checking out Helix. You can go to helixsleep.com/whiskey, and you're gonna get up to $200 off. That's 2 full hundies. How stable does the lean-to have to be? Are there like code things we have to adhere to?
No, it just needs to be covered, and it doesn't even need to be weatherproof. It just needs to keep the direct elements off of it.
They do some wonderful things with tints these days.
I don't see how that could possibly go wrong.
You know, between me and you and the internet,
I think we can figure it out.
I think we can combine forces to be as capable as a real man.
Are you sure?
Damn it! Pro tip, if you get out like a pen and a notepad, you could just drink yourself blind during a work day. Nobody's the wiser. Look, it even looks like she's taking real notes.
I am!
That looks so realistic. You're doing such a good fake job.
Such a good fake job.
You son of a bitch.
I want to try the Austin 101.
Is it?
That's the lighter one.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. That is strong vanilla cream frosting.
I got there's a butterscotch. Yeah, there's much more of a butterscotch than I thought.
Yeah, and then behind it, then you get that light ethanol burn. Are you getting a barrel char note? Because I'm getting a little bit of something that almost is smoky. I want to smell the almost 15-year-old MGP.
Okay.
Whoa!
More straight up vanilla with a charred edge.
Yeah, it's just vanilla and char, and there is a darker brown sugar note in this one, like it's a creme brulee charred vanilla. They actually both smell really good.
All right, 101 first?
Yeah. Lemon bread.
Okay.
With that frosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does get sharp. Like it's sharp and pointy, but it's actually got body to it. But the tastes are pretty simple. Like we're talking a handful of things.
Maybe one of the things that happens whenever you're distilling at such high of a proof is the flavors that are actually coming through whenever you taste it. It's much more simpler sweetness on the taste. Yeah.
I wonder if proofing that down would help, but we'll see. Let's try the MGP as like direct comparison.
That's a much more rich vanilla. So if you're a fan of that vanilla note,
there's this almost dense sugar herbal note where it's more like a Christmas spiced cake.
Mm-hmm. This vanilla very much reminds me of that experiment we did, what happens to vodka in a whiskey barrel.
Absolutely. And we did really small barrels, and it was actual vodka, not like whiskey. So I had even less things for the barrel to interact with than this did.
And I think the thing that was most surprising about that is, you know, vodka, it's known to be flavorless. You put it in a whiskey barrel, and that was just chomping at the bit to throw every bit of vanilla that it could at you.
I think it helped that we put new oak. This is what's exciting to me. People love to shit all over light whiskey because in America, it's a bastard category, right? But in the rest of the world, it's considered a very common thing as a basis for blends, and even more recently, a common thing to release in single releases, like a single grain.
Okay.
And in Scotland and Ireland, they're doing this. It's also column still.
Right.
It's often also corn, and it's used oak. That's exactly what we're drinking.
Let's go taste other whiskeys from other places now. Also, we need to watch a YouTube video on how to build a lean-to.
I'll get my hat and a tape measure and a piece of paper.
Yes.
And we'll measure things.
That's what men do. Measure. There we go.
Got it. I found it.
I'm so proud of you.
whole problem and thing that we have in America where is it really whiskey? It's not really whiskey. It's actually more like vodka.
Yeah.
That fight started in Scotland and Ireland in the late 1800s.
Okay, wow.
Because around 1830, Anais Coffee patented the coffee still.
Yeah.
And Robert Stein was involved earlier, and they made a column still, and they started making effectively light whiskey.
Yeah.
This was blowing up, but there was a huge fight between the malt guys and the pot still guys in Ireland, and the guys making this column clear spirit on whether or not it was real. And the malt guys were outraged.
Right.
What they managed to do is actually very funny.
Whiskey Tribe Glen coins available in the merch store.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pour you the Scottish one first because the Scots were the ones who took advantage of this first. When Anais Coffee patented it, he took it to Ireland and they were like, nah, it's not real. Some of them took it on, but most of them were like, no, we make pot still Irish whiskey. So he went to Scotland and the malt guys were like, absolutely not. And the lowland grain producers, bulk producers were like, efficiency?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So this is Port Dundas, which is a Scottish distillery that's no longer open, but still made enough stock that it can release 12-year-old grain whiskey from the lowlands in Scotland.
Single grain.
This is what was being made on those patent stills.
Yeah.
It could be any number of grains.
Yep.
It's usually the commodity grain, like the cheapest one.
There is a note that you could very easily wrap your hands around.
Right.
It's that vanilla.
Vanilla and maybe with hints of oak, depending on how old it is.
Distilling that high.
Yeah, vanilla cream.
Vanilla cream. Yeah, which is a very popular note, but it's that shininess,
It's
that
definitely there,
brightness.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happened. The malt guys were trying to fight that this was not whiskey.
Okay.
For a long time.
Sure.
They were pissed off about it. They managed to get some guys to go to a pub and order a whiskey, grain whiskey, and then they filed a complaint charge against the pub, filing fraudulent delivery of services. I ordered a whiskey and what you gave me wasn't whiskey. And the malt guys were got all behind this. They're like, yes, finally.
This
this tiny little town, Islington.
This feels very petty.
Yeah, Islington Boroughs
Right.
is like, we're gonna have to have a city meeting and like rule whether or not this is whiskey or not. And what they did was rule it wasn't whiskey. But DCL and the grain guys who had all the money and all the power were like, hold the fuck on. You don't get to decide that. It took a bit, but they managed to get a royal commission appointed to make this decision once and for all.
Right.
Just flooded the market with advertising on grain whiskey was not only a real whiskey, but was even more pure and better for you than the malt whiskey with all of its impurities.
So how do you win hearts and minds?
Yeah.
You buy the hearts
You
and
buy
minds.
the hearts and minds with advertising.
Yeah.
And they won. In 1909, it gets ruled it is actually whiskey.
Okay.
And immediately what everyone was worried about happens. Instantly.
Yeah.
The market is flooded with blends that are dominated by grain.
Yeah.
The flavor that the world knows as Scotch changes for over 100
Yeah,
years.
just a really quick point of clarification. You keep saying grain whiskey. Barley is a grain.
In Scotland, they use malt and almost as a synonym for barley.
Okay, because you can malt a lot of different kinds of
Right.
grain. But whenever you're saying grain, you're meaning not barley.
Right.
And whenever they say malt, they mean barley, even though you can malt other things.
Effectively, yes, although sometimes the grain guys will have malt in the mash bill.
Okay.
But really, it's just any mix of grains.
Right.
It's actually more American style mixed candy, mixed mash bills. Primarily, column still. That's the key identifier.
So
right?
we've done an episode about pot still versus column still, and there is a recognizable difference.
Yeah.
Light whiskey, this is always going to be a column still. Can you do light whiskey in a pot still?
Yes.
Okay.
But efficiently? No.
Okay.
Like the amount of times you're gonna have to distill it to crank up the proof,
No.
and your cut that you're gonna be able to get before it's too low, there's no way that that's efficient.
So if you're talking light whiskey, it's implying heavily that you're talking about column still.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the plates help you get there a lot faster and more efficiently. It's all about efficiency. So this is the Irish version. It's not light whiskey, but I'm using these as an example because it's the closest thing to American light whiskey is Ireland Scottish grain
So
whiskey.
this is not light whiskey, it's just grain
Single
whiskey.
grain.
Single grain.
Yeah.
Column still.
Column still and aged in American oak and then Marsala casks and then blended together. But notice not as much vanilla, but I think that's the Marsala cask that's altering the fruit notes.
Okay, so this was finished in a cask. This is probably of all of the light whiskeys, the one that stepped furthest away from the vanilla.
Yeah.
And there is a bit of that fruit note in there.
More
still,
complex.
Still shiny. Like, you ever have one of the strawberry fruit-filled granola bars? Like an Odie outside inside, and then like a strawberry filling.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I'm getting from this.
Okay, now here's the thing though about Ireland, Scotland, and even Canada. You can make a single grain or effectively a light whiskey, but for it to be called whiskey, it still has to meet the aging requirements of 3 years, just like all other whiskey in those countries.
Yeah.
In America, with light whiskey, we don't have that requirement. Aged in used or uncharred casks, but there's no length of time. So if you want to see what American light whiskey tastes like, it's basically barrel kissed.
Enough just to give it like a light straw.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is from Wisconsin. This
Wow.
is a high rye mash bill light whiskey.
In the glass, it almost looks crystal clear.
Yeah.
It's very new makey. And by new makey, there's like a citrus bready quality. Very citrus, very
Actually,
bready.
it smells more gin-like to me than it does whiskey.
Yeah, that's
like
that's the citrus
the
direction
botanical.
for sure.
Yeah. There's a slight
It is.
darker note that I would attribute, but they look at their age statement. Aged for no less than 1 day in oak barrels.
Okay.
This is where American light whiskey is totally separate. You're never gonna get that from a grain whiskey in other countries.
Getting into this, I'm thinking, oh, you're always just going to get that vanilla note.
Not
Something
necessarily.
rubbing shoulders with vanilla.
Yeah.
So you start getting into more of the fruitier things. And even to like a gin territory. So there's a lot to explore in light whiskey, but I would say you do need to go into it expecting, based on these examples, the brighter, shinier flavors. There's not a lot of basic.
I agree. Go back to that Austin 101, which was your original lighter colorway.
Yeah, it's right here.
Now,
Yeah, that is-
Texan.
Yeah.
100% Texan light whiskey, 2 years old.
This is, again, going back to the butterscotch.
The density.
The vanilla cream, the butterscotch.
The irony is, I would never have called this dense and rich until it lined up with other light whiskeys.
Exactly. The AB though.
Yeah, when you go from whiskey, like normal whiskey, to this, this feels thin, brittle, and shiny. When you place this in a world of light whiskeys, this thing stands out with so much weight and heft.
It's like a liquefied butterscotch for me.
Yeah.
And then the vanilla cream icing on top. Okay, and then going to the 14-ish year old MGP. It's good.
Gotta set your expectations though. Drink for what it's intended.
It's good.
You done with your whiskey? You ready to go do some construction?
Dibs on operating heavy machinery.
So, needed a bunch of materials to build this, covering this lean-to, this shed over the boiler. And it looks like all the stuff just arrived. So we're gonna get it unloaded and then pretend to know what we're doing. What's going on, guys? Where'd you go, John? I've been here the whole time. So, you can just... Damn it, John!
We have this really cool idea that we're gonna let people who take tours write their names and sign this thing. We're gonna have to paint it first.
That counts as helping.